It's July 1st, 2024, and I'm with Mr. John Jeckovich, a World War II veteran on the front lines of the Battle of Bulge. Not many people survived the Battle of Bulge. John Jeckovich was shot in the shoulder by a machine gun and still had shrapnel. Like, thank God it didn't go in the bone, it went in and out. He's sent to Paris for a hospital, still has shrapnel in his leg. Whenever he goes to the airport, the alarms go off because he's loaded with metal. Can't remove it, just the way it is. And Mr. Jeckovich, like many young men, was a teenager when he went in. And we're reading his book, Their Mother's Sons, and it's about a book Mr. Jeckovich wrote 20-some years ago about from kindergarten all the way to his retirement. Mr. Jeckovich, as I said, is a World War II veteran, highly decorated. Did not
highly
start
decorated.
highly decorated, damn straight. Highly decorated, damn straight. He did not start speaking about the World War or his activities in 2 years ago. Mr. Jeckovich is hit 99 years old, and during the height of this war, there was at least 16 to 17 million young men and ladies serving the war effort. Today, we have about 100,000 left. That's it. 100 and some are dying each and every day. They're all in their mid to late 90s. And so I'm sitting here with Mr. John Jeckovich, and his mind is like a library. He's been there. He's on the front line. He wasn't in an office during World War II typing. He was in the dirt. He was in the snow. He was in the trenches with shooting his heavy machine guns, and that's exactly what he did. And his book has great history, and I'll read as much as I can. It's 900 long pages. Yeah, 900 pages. It's a long-ass book, but it's a good book. So anytime you have a question, there's World War II vet, you text me, and the next day I will try to answer it. This is an ongoing process that we had with Mr. Jeckovich. This is the 122nd edition of this docuseries. Also, if you Google his name, you would see that the Daily Mail wrote a full-page story about him, and also the World War II History did a story on him about 1 year ago. So if you have any questions, there are honest goodness questions about World War II, and no bullshit, you dial this number and text a question. The number you would dial would be 407-366-0000. And I'll try by the next day, when we open up the docuseries, in the evenings generally speaking, I will try to answer it for you. But straight questions, no nonsense. No nonsense. Number again is 407-366-0000 to text questions directly to Mr. John Jeckovich. What's your dog tag number, sir?
Huh?
Your dog tag number.
Huh?
Your dog tag number.
42965.
Guy sharp as a tack, knocking on 100, reads the newspapers, no glasses, perfect health. He jogged for 80 years, and his knees just gave out on him just a couple of years ago. But it saved the rest of them. Jogging 80 years, no smoking, no drinking, no carousing. Straight life. Hard workers they were back then. Straight people. So what are you looking at now, Mr. Jeckovich?
Cobra.
Cobra.
Ford Torito, Cobra.
You love those old cars, don't you?
Huh?
You love those old cars. Hey, I have your book in front of me. Do you want me to start reading it, or do you want to read it?
What?
Your book. You want to start reading it? Or
No, you read it.
Okay. Take your time. Keep on.
Now, wait a minute. What's this?
Take your time. Keep on looking at those books, and anything you'd have to say, you interject and say it. We're here for you. That's the story. We want to listen to what you have to say. So here we go. Getting to know you. This is chapter 5, page 105, and this is when John Jeckovich is at Camp Breckenridge, and many a time he would go to 4 or 5 different basic type training camps, and he ended up in Camp Breckenridge, which is only actually 30 miles from his house where he started. He went all over the United States training, but it was only 300 miles from his house. And he goes away on weekends to Owensboro, Kentucky, and by accident, he met some 2 nice girls, Ann and Mar. He was lost. He was trying to get the bus. He was miles away from the bus station from his weekend pass. Just a second, let it run. Hello? I'm on live videoing. What do you want?
Huh?
I'm videoing live. Is there something that's in an emergency I can help you with? Yeah. Make sure, yeah, do it. That's great. I'll call you back. What's that? Okay, I'll call you later. I'm on a docu-series. I'm got all lights and cameras on, and he can't break away. Love you. Bye. Okay. So I'm about to read his book. So John Jeckovich ended up finding this girl by mistake. Ended up in a residential neighborhood looking for the train station. And they were very friendly girls. He said, well, where the hell am I? You're a long ways from the train stations. And the nice girls were actually a couple years older than him, said, I'll drive you to the train station. So they drove him, and John Jeckovich became very friendly with Ann Mahaney. And they met many, many times, and they're talking about marriage and this and that, the typical stuff. And he promised her, he said, I'm going to active duty right now, and I'll call you or we'll meet up again. And actually, Mr. Jeckovich never followed through with that. However, 80 long years later, Mr. Jeckovich called up Ann Mahaney. He called her on the phone. He kept his promise, but it took a hell of a long time to keep his promise. 80 long years, approximately. And how'd that phone call go, Mr. Jeckovich?
What phone call?
You called Ann Mahaney. You told her you'd call her after you got on the front line to Battle of Bulge. It took you 80 years to call her. How'd that phone call go when you called Ann?
This time?
Yeah, when you called Ann.
We talked 2 minutes, that was it.
What happened? Tell us what happened.
Well, she was real feeble. Well, she was 89 years old.
Yeah, and possibly Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
So after that 2-minute phone call, what did you do then? What did you do then?
I think I went to the auditorium.
No, recently, I'm not talking about World War II, about Ann Mahaney's picture. What did you do then?
Well, I took the picture off with my mother up.
In your office, you had Ann Mahaney's picture when she was a beautiful 20, 21-year-old girl next to your desk for so many years. There was even a yellow stain on the wall.
Yeah.
After you removed it, it sat there for so long. And then after that phone call, you removed it. And then what'd you put up?
Put my mother's picture up there.
So there you go. They're mother's sons.
Their mother's son. A couple full circle. Full circle.
So, speaking about it, Mr. Jeckovich's basically 3 girlfriends that we could speak about was Ann Mahaney, that started in Owensboro. She was a fine young girl. They never hooked up after the Battle of Bulge. He did call her 80 years, and too much time has passed. And then the next girl he met was Renee.
Renee, yeah.
Renee was in Paris. She was a very kind person. She was
So she's going to be a nun.
an artist. She was in the process of becoming a nun, and then the Germans killed her father and her young brother, and for a couple years, or a year or so after that, she left the monastery, and she was questioning her faith that, her father's killed by the Germans, or her brother's killed, so he's questioned her faith. So Mr. Jeckovich spent a great deal of time with him. They became extremely close, and at that time, Mr. Jeckovich was in a hospital in Paris recovering from a machine gun hole in his right shoulder. It went clear through and shrapnel in his body. So when he had weekend passes in this hospital, when he's getting better, he would see her for like a month or so. So finally, he was sent, they bandaged him up, he was able to walk, he was able to pull the trigger of his machine gun, so they sent him back in active service. And so, tell us briefly what happened to Renee.
Renee?
Yeah, what happened to Renee?
Well, she went, the nuns told her she was in a cloistered life, but she was going to be away from it. They're going to have to send her to Saigon, Vietnam, to get her straightened out as a mercenary. She went there.
She went back to the monastery to become a nun.
Yeah.
And then
she got in resistance fighter.
And the senior mother of the monastery said, "We need to send you to Saigon or someplace else to get you straightened out." Tell us what happened.
Well, she went to Vietnam, and she was there 2 days. They killed her.
And why did they kill a nun?
Why did they kill her? They thought that she was a spy.
But was she was also in the French Resistance, correct?
Yeah.
And she took you to the tombs underground and showed you where her and the French Resistance met.
Yeah.
During different times. Could you just briefly describe what that underground did, and what did the French Resistance do during World War II? Tell us briefly.
No, the resistance quarters was down in the basement, down underground, in a lighting station down there. They like the city up, and she had a headquarters down there.
That's very interesting. At a later date, we'll talk about Miss Young. That was my father's other girlfriend that he met in Haverford West, and we have someone helping us in Haverford West that lives there to help catch up with her and see if we could talk to her, but that has not materialized yet. Mm-hmm. In fact, in our search to find Miss Young, the big newspaper in the area, the Daily Mail, which pushes out 800,000 to 1 million papers most Sundays or weekdays, did a full-page story on Mr. Jeckovich to help search for the Young family that he spent some time with at Haverford West. So we'll see. We'll catch up this at a later date to see if we find out more. So right now, I'll pick up on chapter 5, and this is what he's getting to know Ann in Owensboro, page 105, and it's called Getting to Know You. Did you want to have any comments before I start reading?
No, go ahead.
I took her in my arms and kissed her several times, whispering her that she was the greatest and I loved her very much. I told her I had thought about our situation a great deal and had came to the same conclusion she had. With my uncertain future, I could not ask anyone to share that completely with me. Perhaps after the war, things would be different and the time would be more appropriate. All the while, as we discussed it, it was stirring in the back of my mind how relieved I was that I did not have to subject Ann to the torturous ordeal of being mother. Not only were you questionable once you went on the front lines, that you were to be wounded or be able to come back, the other obstacle was taking Ann to meet your mother.
Yeah.
Well, how would that have went?
How did I meet my mother?
How would Ann have done meeting your mother?
How did I head by?
How would your mother have taken Ann? How would your mother have greeted Ann?
She got a V email.
But if you brought Ann home for your 15-day what would your mother's reaction have been?
Mother's what?
You're getting a 15-day furlough coming up, correct?
Yeah.
If you went home with Ann, what would your mother have said?
Mother's effect?
If you went home with Ann, what would your mother?
She would be upset. She couldn't understand what was going on.
So she would cause Ann some grief.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why you never took her there. All right. Here we go. It may sound indifferent or apathetic, but no matter that was the way I felt, I would never convey those thoughts to Ann under any circumstances. We sat there holding each other and watching the movie lights below, thinking how similar that movement was to our fleeting lives. To break the nostalgic spell we had got ourselves into, I jokingly asked if I could see her again. She put her finger upon my lips and told me to stop talking that way. I kissed her again and said I was a lucky person and I had met her and began with her now. She said nothing but held my hand more tightly and we snuggled more into my shoulder. We must have sat in the car for several hours, for when I looked at my watch, it was 1:30 hours. I looked about the area, most of the cars were gone. I and Ann concerned of the late hour and we should be leaving. She agreed and proceeded to leave the bluff. As we drove off, I told her my treat as I was hungry. I asked her where we could go this late hour to get something to eat. She laughed and touched my arms and said, "Thank you for the lovely evening. I shall think of it often." I replied that I was not leaving yet, just getting interesting. We drove down Ewing Road, crossed Main Street, and then headed south on Crabtree Avenue, and then to go west on 9th Street. A little way down West 9th Street, Ann pulled into a small parking lot with a huge neon sign blazing in the front rectangular brick building. The sign blared out for all to see, Big Al's Diner, Big Al's Burger. How was Big Al's?
Big Al?
How was Big Al's Diner? Do you remember Big Al's Diner?
Oh, yeah.
How was it?
Well, it was a small family diner.
Ann,
Food was clean.
Ann knew where it was though, right?
Yeah.
Did you have a nice lunch?
Food was good there, yeah.
Yeah. The diner inside was modestly furnished and almost bordered on being very, very clean, with its bright imitation leather booths, each with its own jukebox, where for a quarter you're able to select the latest tune of the day. I ordered the Big Al Burger. How big was the Big Al Burger?
Yeah, probably double.
Ann did not want anything but coffee. As we waited for our order, Ann asked if I'd be able to get another weekend pass. I said that is doubtful. I would get one several weeks possibly. I had gotten the last 3 weekends off, which was unusual. She then asked possibly of her coming to the camp to visit. I said I don't know if that's possible, but would find out. Our order arrived and the burger was huge, which prompted Ann to giggle a bit and suggested I cut her off a small piece. It hasn't looked delicious. She was not a great eater, nor did I want her to be, but sometimes I wondered how she kept her body and soul together. She would nibble at one item, then another, then never really taking the entire meal on one large feast. As we sat and ate my burger, Big Al Burger, I asked her if she had any idea of the time. "Who cares?" she murmured, her mouth full of the Big Al's burger. It so happened that the time was 2:30 hours, and I said we would be thinking of heading for our respective homes. I did not want to go home, and I'm enjoying myself too much, she related, touching the paper napkin to her sensual lips. Being realistic, I suggested we had to drive across to Weatherbury's, where I was staying, and we'd have a long drive down Frederica Street to her place. By then it'd be 500 hours. She agreed half-heartedly, took another sip of her third cup of coffee, and said that she was going to freshen up a bit before we left. I always looked forward to Ann's return from her freshening up ritual, where she applied new makeup and came back with a fragrance and enchanting that was enchanting and intoxicating. As we drove down to Weatherbury's, I sat close to her and put my hand on her knee, and I kissed her cheek. She whispered softly that if I did not stop, she's liable to have an accident. I continued for several minutes and then moved away from her. I then reached, kissed her gently, and said, Where are you going?" She said I was teasing her, and she moved closer and kissed me. I thought about last night and just how easily one could get carried away. I attributed most of my association with Anne, her kindness, gentleness, and her complete sincerity and love bestowed on me. I needed some love, and certainly afforded me that luxury. I would be eternally grateful to her, for I did not know how I existed before I met Anne, and I would not want to return to that sorry state. Suddenly, there's a knock on the door. I looked at the time. It was 12:15 hours. I bolted to the door and opened it. There was Anne standing there, smiling. "Good morning, sleepyhead. Are you going to invite me in?" she remarked, poised at the entrance. She had a striking, beautiful, radiant, even though she only slept a few hours sleep. I stepped aside as she walked by me. Her perfume was captivating and seductive, and the feelings I experienced the night before were once again rising in my consciousness. After a moment, she asked if I had breakfast, and I said I had not paying too much attention to what she said. She quickly responded, "You have won my mother over, and now you're going to have to pay the consequences." I then asked if could she spend a little time here before we went to the house. She got up from the rocker and replied, "No, you're going to mess me up like you did last night," and she passed me and kissed me on the cheek. Anne's mother greeted us warmly, and I felt she was genuinely glad to see me again. Anne had put on an apron, and I thought it made her look more alluring and enticing. I wanted to tell her we talked about that after work at Sylvania, how much she liked it, and she felt she was contributing to the war effort. She had spent most of her working life in an office-type job environment, but decided to do something more substantial during the war. I found out that Anne, as she was testing electronic parts for radar's equipment used in planes of the Allied Armed Forces. To me, that was pretty important work to be performing during the war. Anne would come in occasionally, ask her mother something about cooking, and then return to the kitchen. I thought she was also striking in a domestic setting, and she appealed to me greatly. I thought I would take her under any circumstance. The dinner was delectable, and an after-dinner conversation consumed the better part of several hours. Minutes?
5 minutes.
I volunteered to help Anne with the cleanup, as Anne's mother's sister had called and wanted her mother to come visit her. Anne suggested that her mother go, and we take care of everything here. Her mother finally consented to go and said that she would be back in several hours.
Be back in what? Several hours?
Several hours. Ann and I cleared away the table in the dining room and then went into the kitchen. I told Ann that the meal was great and that her mother was a gracious host. I then remarked that she looked beautiful and she was wearing a blouse and a skirt with accented her lovely figure as she crisscrossed the kitchen. The sound of her high-heel pumps on the floor sent sensuous signals throughout my body. She knew that I was admiring her, and she was enjoying it immensely. As we cleaned up the kitchen, Ann took my hand and led me into the living room. It was a large room with an oak-paneled inserts into it, all of the lower parts of the walls. There were large grandfather clocks standing in one corner of the room, which chimed at the quarter hour and sent melodies vibrating throughout the room. The room was optimally furnished with an abundance of leather chairs and a large couch against the longest wall.
About 3 minutes.
Ann sat on one end of the couch and I stretched out, my head in her lap and my feet dangling over the edge. She moved her body to accommodate my head and shoulders. As she did, she crossed her legs. I then took her hand and put it on her silken leg and began talking to her and kissing her. She then took my hand with her finger touched her lips. I said, certainly we'll be getting I blurted out, we're going to have to face it in a very short time. She looked and started and murmured, what do you mean? I took her hand in mine, put her arm around her, and said, we will be overseas before the year was up. How sure are you, she muttered. I said, that was certainly. We would be getting a 15-day furlough shortly, and after that, and only a question of time. She began sobbing softly, and I told her in my arms. I held her in my arms and trying to kiss away her tears. She sat there and I held her. She stopped sobbing and was still trembling slightly. I told her everything would work out and the war would not last much longer. And if she still wanted me, I would come back to her after it was all over with. She lifted up her face and half sobbing, I want you more than anything else in the world. I was enamored by that, and she said and stated I felt the same way towards her. I wanted her more than life itself and was frustrated when I could not achieve my desire. Ann got up and turned on the radio and whispered that she wanted me to dance with her. I took her arms and began dancing. As we danced, I repeatedly kissed her and ran my fingers through her hair, all the while telling her I miss all of this. Minutes.
Okay.
She turned and kissed me and said,
1 minute, 30 seconds.
I won't let you go. It's not fair. I will not get another chance like this ever again. As I held her, I mentioned that the Army had something to say about where I would go, and besides, she should not be going with a dog face like me. Instead, she'd be seeing officers, not enlisted men. For a quick second, I detected a flash of temper, but she quickly repressed it and said I was foolish to talk like that. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed 2300 hours just as her mother pulled into the driveway. I quickly reminded Ann that was the last bus left for camp at 0100 hours. She nodded, straightened her hair, and brushed her skirt. Minutes?
35 seconds there.
Mrs. Mahaney stated that she had a good time chatting with her sister and suggested to Ann that she should make some coffee before we left for the bus station. As we talked about many irrelevant topics, Mrs. Mahaney looked at Ann and inquired if she felt all right, as she appeared distraught. Ann said that was fine and that we had to leave for the bus station.
That's it.
Let me mark it.